The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Ekev Tov Shin Nun Aleph. In that year, Shabbos Ekev was Shabbos Mevorchim Chodesh Elul. It was the Shabbos that blessed the new month of Elul. And consequently, the Rabbi starts the Sicha by saying that it is an appropriate time to make a Cheshbon HaNefesh, a soul account of what has been achieved in the previous year and what we can look forward to in the coming year. And since Rosh Chodesh Elul falls on Shabbos and Sunday, as it did in that year, first day Rosh Chodesh was Shabbos, second day Rosh Chodesh was Sunday, and the Shabbos was Parshas Ekev, therefore this Cheshbon HaNefesh, this soul account, is connected with Shabbos, Sunday, and the Parsha of Ekev. And this is seen in the flow of the Sicha. Since the soul account of Elul, the accounting, has to do with the general avodah service of a person, which in one sentence that can be summarized as Ani lo nivresi ela l'shamesh eskoini, I am only created in order to serve my master. Therefore, what we need to do is make a soul accounting in that general subject. And that, of course, is hinted to in the word Elul itself. Because Elul, the name of the month, has a remes. In Shir HaShirim, there is a pasuk that says, Ani l'doidi v'doidi li. I am for my beloved, and my beloved is for me, which is the Rosh Tevis, the first letters, spell out the word Elul. And of course, you have two dynamics in that word. You have Ani l'doidi, I am for my beloved, which is a movement from below. And then you have v'doidi li, my beloved is for me, which is the reciprocal response from above. However, we start with Ani l'doidi, from below. And the reason is because avodah, service of Hashem, has to be fired and motivated b'koyach atzmoi, with one's own power. And the reason is because in order to achieve something, you don't want it to be, as the Zohar calls it, nahamodich sufa, bread of shame. It's not automatic, as the Friedrich Rebbe said, by Chassidim nitor kein bederech memela. By Chassidim, there's nothing that comes automatically. Everything needs to be earned, everything needs to be worked upon, and when you achieve, it's yours, and that is how this world is set out. So, Ani l'doidi, this is where we start from. And although in the month of Elul, the Alter Rebbe tells us the famous mashal, parable of Hamelech Basada, that the king is in the field and everybody who wants to can go and approach the king, and the king is smiling towards the king is smiling towards everybody who approaches him, unlike Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, when the king is already in his palace. In the month of Elul, the king is very approachable. And this, of course, refers to the 13 attributes of mercy, which are shining in the month of Elul. And basically, this is an empowerment from above to say to us, come, do something, get prepared for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, for the new year. So, although our service from below is in fact previously empowered from a movement from above, nevertheless, the principle has to be our avodah from below, and that will, in a reciprocal way, bring down a greater effusion from above. That is also hinted to in the fact that the letter Aleph starts the word Elul. The letter Aleph is the first of the Hebrew alphabet, and certainly in number, it's the number 1, which is the first number, and thereafter you only go upwards. You go from that which is easier to that which is more complicated. And similarly in avodah, you start at the beginning. And yet at the same time, Aleph is also the first letter of the 22 letters in creation, and Aleph also represents Hashem, which is the idea of completion. So we do have these two dynamics in the word Elul. But since our avodah is contained in the word Elul, we don't just talk about the reciprocal doidi li that comes from above, but that milamayla lamata, that movement from above, also has to be present in our avodah from below. In other words, even in our service, there needs to be the two perspectives of from below and from above. And that is actually reflected in the 2 days of Rosh Chodesh Elul, and specifically as it was in that year in Tafshin Nun Aleph, when the first day of Rosh Chodesh was Shabbos, and the second day of Rosh Chodesh was a Sunday. What is the difference between Shabbos and a Sunday? A Sunday represents the beginning of the week, you're starting from below, and of course you're building up. Whereas Shabbos is the culmination, Shabbos is the apex, and Shabbos minei misparchen kol hayom, and Shabbos gives a bracha for the entire week. So if you want, it is the perspective from above. And the truth is, everybody is composite of both a body and a soul, a guf and a neshama. The guf, the body, is created min ha'ofar, is created from the dust. That was created on the first day of creation. And the avodah which a person has to do with their body in refining it and elevating it, that has to come all from below. Whereas in terms of soul, their soul is, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, a chelek elikami mal mamash, a veritable part, a spark of godliness, which in fact comes from above. And therefore that gives the Jew the capability that they should act in a way of a Shabbosdika conduct, or as the Rabbi uses the expression, a himel yid, a heavenly person, which means that notwithstanding wherever they're holding, they have the capability of acting in a very complete and revealed way from the soul perspective. And consequently, the cheshbon hanefesh, the soul account of the month of Elul, must contain both these perspectives. And the truth is, every day has to contain both these perspectives. So, for example, we find on Shabbos, we also say the Korban Atamid, the daily offering prayer, every single day, inclusive of Shabbos, because daily activity has to be there also on Shabbos. And yet, during the weekday, we need to remember the Shabbos day, especially as Shammai did, that he used to go and buy something every single day of the week in honor of Shabbos. So we see that even in the weekday, there has to be that element of Shabbos. In the Jewish people itself, you have these two elements. You have those who are principally working from below, business people, and those who are working from above, those who are Klei Kodesh, those who are learners, and we have the fusion of both of them. The principal day, however, of Rosh Chodesh is the second day of Rosh Chodesh, and on that year, as we mentioned beforehand, it's on a Sunday. And the reason is because in terms of dira b'tachtonim, in terms of making an abode for the indwelling of the divine in this world, the principal avodah has to actually be from below, which, by the way, explains why we always count the days of the week from Sunday. Although man, Adam and Eve, were created on Friday, and consequently, surely we should count the beginning of the week from Friday. We don't. We actually count it from Sunday because there has to be this idea of working from the bottom up, rather like the lever from which lifts up a heavy load. You lift that up specifically from the bottom. And then actually you can reach the greatest heights. So really in the soul accounting of Elul, there needs to be ani ladoidi. There needs to be an account. How am I doing bottoms up from below? How am I doing in terms of refining my body and the portion of my world around me? Avoda b'koach atzmai, working with my own soul powers. Then there needs to be the cheshbon hanefesh, the soul account of v'doi dili. My beloved is for me. Am I actually working to the full capacity that my soul gives me in order that my soul can be fully revealed and can empower things which are far beyond what I would expect b'koyach asmi, coming from my own power? In other words, since I have a veritable spark of godliness within me, I can demand things of myself which are even higher than what I would have expected of myself. And finally, you've got the fusion of the two of them together, which means within the soul powers of any given individual, you have the full revelation of the soul. So, to put all that and summarize it together, this cheshbon tzedek, this soul accounting, has to think, what have I achieved this year in terms of myself, becoming a better person, making the world around me better? What could I possibly achieve because of my soul perspective? And how I can bring them both together, that in this coming year, I can have an amazing effect on myself and on the world around me through one simple deed. As the Rambam says, that it could be that just one deed will sway the world for good, for Yeshua and Hatzalah, and bring Mashiach. That's all connected with the parsha of Ekev, because in the word Ekev there are a number of translations. Rashi translates Ekev from the idea of a heel. Mitzvahs she'adam dosh ba'akevav. V'hoya Ekev tishmun. If you'll listen to the mitzvahs that most people tread on, most people think, they're not so important. But if those, the heel mitzvahs you'll listen to, that's how the Sedra begins and how Rashi translates it. Other commentaries translate the word Ekev, meaning at the end of. V'hoya Ekev tishmun. In other words, at the end of listening to all of this, you will get a great reward. And in fact, simply translated Ekev, it means ba'avur. In other words, if you will listen, then. In other words, because you are listening, then. And if you put all that together, because it's all in one word, it means that through even the heel mitzvahs, through even those which are at the bottom, we can actually reach the highest of the high. And in the end, we will fuse them together. So working with the lowest of the low can actually be the way and the derech to reach the highest of the high. And of course, that is explained in Chassidus, that it is specifically the very essence of Hashem, Atzmus, that can create the Yesh HaNivra, that can create the physical entity, the physical world, and consequently, specifically through working with the physical world, we can actually effect the greatest revelation of Atzmus, of the revelation of godliness, when Mashiach will come. And that, of course, is connected with what the Rebbe has been speaking about in the previous Farbrengens, which was the imminent coming of Mashiach. Because the word Ekev is also from the word Ikvasa de Mashiach, the epoch of the Messiah, the heel or the footsteps of Mashiach coming, as we can hear those footsteps coming. And Ekev means the heel, which means we're the lowest generation in terms of spiritual capability. We are like midgets, but standing on shoulders of giants. So we're like the heel, as it says in Chazal, in the generation just before the coming of Mashiach, there will be tremendous spiritual decline, tremendous amount of chutzpah, as the Gemara says at the end of Masechta Tainis, Soita. However, Ekev can also mean Soif. It's Ikvasa de Mashiach, that specifically this generation, perhaps the generation of the greatest spiritual decline, can actually affect the greatest aliyah, the greatest elevation, and the end of the Avodah, which is the coming of Mashiach. And all that is Ekev, because we will make a cheshbon and nefesh, we'll make a soul account, and recognize and realize that in fact we do have the power and are empowered in order to effect the greatest things. Then the Rebbe addressed the question that since the year has gone through, it's been a year of which there's been tremendous niflois, great things that have happened. According to all the signs of Chazal, Mashiach should have come a long time ago. And everybody's crying out, Ad Mosai, until when? And why isn't Mashiach coming? So it could be because of an answer which Mashiach gave to the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov once Rosh Hashanah had Aliyas HaNeshama, an elevation of his soul, and he went to the palace, the heavenly palace of Mashiach, and he asked him, Emosai Asimar, when are you coming? And Mashiach answered, when your teachings will be widely disseminated outside. And the Rebbe developed in the Sicha the idea of how, in the successive generations after the Baal Shem Tov, and specifically today, the Hafotza has gone to the widest possible of circles and to the Chutza She'ein Chutza Lamata Bimenu, to the outside circle that is the furthest outside circles. So the Rebbe said that perhaps there is a certain group of Jews to which these teachings did actually not yet reach. And the Rebbe said that it may be the blind, because the blind do not have access to read currently the teachings of Chassidus. However, that itself has been rectified, because in those days there had reached 770 a Tanya which was written in Braille. And the Rebbe said Braille is the written language of the blind because they use their fingers to read it. And through this, Hafotzas Hamayonas has come to a whole group of Jews who hitherto perhaps didn't have access to the teachings of Chassidus. And even though this Tanya in Braille has not yet reached all of them, but nevertheless, since the Tanya in Braille has already reached 770, which is going to be the powerhouse which will disseminate to them, it can be considered already as if it has reached them. And therefore, we can look forward to the time, as it says in the Medrash, that when Mashiach will come, all the blind, they will be able to see, and Torah Chadosha Mi'iti Teitzei, Hashem will reveal a new dimension of Torah that Mashiach will teach, and he'll teach it ba'ofen shel re'iyah. We won't have to actually look in books to read it, but we will be able to see it, and that should all be in a way that it should happen immediately, Ekev umiyad mamash.